Hey, how's it going, everybody? I am Indypride from Milk and Cookies Total War, and we have finally received confirmation of the release date for Bretonnia. As I'm sure most of you are aware by now, Bretonnia is slated to be the next DLC faction for Total War Warhammer, but in this case, we'll be getting the entire faction and all of the new additions to their roster for free. And as it turns out, Creative Assembly was not kidding when they said release would be near the end of the month, because they will be officially launching on February 28th with the Old World Edition. Of course, they've been available in custom battle and multiplayer for a while now, and even available in some faction unlockers for campaign, but this will be their official time to shine in the limelight, and the biggest news for Bretonnia fans since their entire tabletop line of miniatures was squatted in Age of Sigmar in 2016. They will be officially playable in campaign with 3 legendary Lord characters, King Lewin, the Fey Enchantress, and Alberich of Bordelot, who will very likely have his own unique start position in, you guessed it, Bordelot. As I've covered previously, new units are on the way as well. The Holy Pilgrims with Grail Reliquae have already been confirmed in screenshots and assets released by CA during the 12 Days of Festag event. They push around a dead Grail Knight that confers the Blessing of the Lady ward save in an area of effect, and we'll also be getting Questing Knights with two-handed swords, Knights Errant, and Prophetess of the Lady. All of those will definitely be coming as well. And you should also expect flaming attack variants for Peasant Bowmen and Trebuchets, which will give them much needed counters to regeneration and Wood Elf Tree Spirit units. And I must say, I am very much looking forward to Grail Knights finally receiving their Blessing of the Lady ward save and a bit of a rebalance. They've been missing that damage reduction for a while now, and I think they should be a little bit better than they are currently in Total War Warhammer. Now, there has obviously been rampant speculation on this topic, but they are for sure getting some new units that have never been seen before in an official army book. The last Games Workshop supported Bretonnian army book was in 6th edition, almost 17 years ago. Warhammer Fantasy moved past that into 7th edition, then 8th edition, then the End Times, and then into Age of Sigmar. And over the years, the Kingdom of Feudalism, Faux Chivalry, and Peasant Oppression fell behind the rest of the cast. They never received some of the new toys factions like the Empire, Skaven, and Warriors of Chaos got with their updated rulebooks. But come February 28th, that will all change. Even from this screenshot right here, you might have noticed something the Bretonnians have never had before. That's right, Hippogriff Knights are coming to Total War Warhammer. You can see a full unit of them on the right side of your screen in this screenshot. It's an interesting choice by Creative Assembly and Games Workshop, one that I'm actually perfectly content with. Some people are Oldhammer purists, and that's fine. They would much prefer to see Bretonnia stay the same as they were in 6th edition, but if Bretonnia had ever received an updated army book, it's very likely we would have seen Hippogriff Knights on the tabletop game, given 8th edition's emphasis on adding monstrous units. But if someone had told me 3 months ago that we'd be getting a Hippogriff unit, I would have bet money they'd be a single entity, not rolling in groups of 6 or 12. Now, there's certainly some debate as to the size of these monsters, but CA's opted for a rendition that rivals the size and the power of Deathclaw and other Imperial Griffins. So, seeing a squad of them rolling in together is going to be very impressive, maybe even a bit wonky with them all ganging up and attacking a single entity unit like a Lord character. That remains to be seen, but regardless, it's a very welcome addition to the Bretonnian roster in my opinion. Now, I was reading the 6th edition army book for Bretonnia and ran into this quote about hippogriffs that I really love, so I'm going to share it. And keep in mind, this is a Bretonnian noble speaking. Many of my fellows would say that the Pegasus is the grandest mount that any knight could ever aspire to. They speak of the Pegasi's grace, beauty, and speed, extolling these as the greatest virtues to be had in any beast. But the only virtue I see in speed is if it gets me to the battlefield quicker. There is grace enough for me in the clash of arms, and I forgot how to perceive beauty years ago. I don't expect tricks from my mount, I expect carnage, and I get it with my hippogriff. Let other knights have their elegant winged horses. I prefer my savage friend. But I think we're going to get more than just hippogriffs in this updated roster. Years ago, there were rumors floating around that Bretonnia was due for some updates, and one theory that had a fair amount of weight behind it, and it might have actually been a leak that got scrapped when GW decided not to push through with new rulebooks, was that a new magical support cavalry unit was on the way. Think of a unit like the Sisters of the Thorn for the Wood Elves, but in this case, the long-lost kidnapped boys of Bretonnia. So for those who don't know, Morgiana Le Fay, also known as the Fey Enchantress, is the religious leader of Bretonnia, basically the female pope. She is not so secretly an elf, as the nickname Feyfolk for the Wood Elves implies, and the Azrai of Athelorn frequently took Bretonnian boys and girls into the forest. The girls were taught to become deftly attuned to the winds of magic, and were sent back as damsels and prophetess of the cult of the Lady of the Lake. The boys are never seen or heard from again, but the rumor was that they were also taught magic, and that Games Workshop was gearing up to release a unit that functioned very similarly to the Sisters of the Thorn, a magical support cavalry unit with a few bound spells independent of the Winds of Magic pool that could also harass enemies and run down skirmishers. Now, I have no idea if this unit would be included in Total War Warhammer, but there was certainly a decent amount of weight behind the rumor. I've had a few friends who didn't talk to each other with strong connections to Games Workshop talk about them in the past. So we'll see soon enough, but that seems like a possible addition for the faction. It would definitely fill a role that makes sense in the lore and would fill a hole that the current roster does not have. As for the Green Knight, Darren confirmed on Reddit months ago that we'd be getting him in some capacity. He's not on the list of legendary lords, and in fact, in the tabletop game, he had a rule that explicitly prevented him from being the army's general. For that reason, and the fact that the community has been asking for this feature for a while, I think the Green Knight will be the first legendary hero in Total War Warhammer, a character that cannot lead armies, who functions similar to an agent on the campaign map, but can never die, and can only be wounded for a certain number of turns. There will likely be some kind of mechanic where you fill up a favor of the Lady meter by completing objectives or missions issued by the Fey Enchantress, and after you've filled that, you'll get access to him for a certain number of turns before he disappears like the ethereal unit that he is, and you have to fill the meter again. This would of course open the door for Krell, Lord of Undeath, Gotrek and Felix, Brunner the Bounty Hunter, and any number of beloved Warhammer characters to enter the trilogy. So hopefully that happens. There is definitely a big outcry for it. I definitely expect to see legendary heroes implemented at some point, and I think the Green Knight would be a very logical stepping stone into that mechanic. On top of all of this, I am expecting a comprehensive patch. This has not been confirmed by Creative Assembly, but with the launch of a new edition of the game and the 2 full months they've been working, I would be a little bit disappointed not to see the most comprehensive patch notes to date. I think the game is in a very good spot right now, and that Creative Assembly has done an amazing job thus far, but there are still some glaring issues with the game that could be addressed in this patch. The vast majority of the original Legendary Lords are pretty generic and underpowered compared to their counterparts from the DLCs. Both Balthazar Gelt and Kemmler are in serious need of rework, but even the others like Karl Franz, Ungrim Iron Fist, and Grimgor Ironhide still feel pretty underwhelming compared to the newer lords, mostly because I think CA was playing it safe on release and became more bold as the months went on, which was definitely a good thing for the game, but they just need to go back and give the originals the same kind of treatment. Also, Ungrim Iron Fist should definitely be starting his campaign in Slayer Keep. That's like kind of his home. Starting him in Karazakarak is not ideal, and I think for the majority of the Legendary Lord characters going forward, there should be 1 or 2 that stay in the original home province, and then the rest of the lords that come out should be in their unique start positions. It makes for so much more replayable campaigns, and I'm very glad CA has been implementing that in their DLC releases over the last few months. Also, as I addressed in my comprehensive magic balance video, there are a ton of issues with magic as it is currently implemented, from some lores of magic like the lore of metal being almost completely useless and not representative of their true nature as a hard counter to high armor factions, to many spells being utterly anemic in terms of their damage output and effect on battle. There are more things I'd like to see get addressed in this patch, but I want to keep the focus on Bretonnia, so I hope you all are looking forward to their release like I am. There's nothing quite like seeing a thundering army of feudal knights slam into a greenskin horde or the monsters of chaos. Heavy cav factions have always been my favorite kind of faction in Total War games. I love microing heavy cavalry, and I am very much looking forward to playing as them. So I will definitely be looking forward to their faction release on February 28th. Thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Indypride signing out for now.